Good evening and welcome to Nashua Community RoundTable. My name is David Lyle. I'll be your host this evening. Tonight we are here with Steve Marchand, candidate for governor. Steve, welcome back to the show.
Great
It's
to see
great to
you.
have you here.
Same here. Thank you very much.
And w- last time you were on the show, you mentioned that one of your two big goals for New Hampshire is to make it the best place to start and raise a family, the best place to start and grow a business. When it comes to starting and raising a family, to me that tells me that the big core things that need to be done are we need to improve our education system, we need to improve our housing market, we need to do what we can so that everyone who comes to this state, whether they born here or they moved here, have a chance to have a life. What would you say are going to be what would you say would be key to making that happen, that we can progress this state forward?
Well, over many years of talking to a lot of smart people in the private sector in particular, I used to direct corporate relations for UNH. They kept coming up with four big things that drove getting young talent here and keeping it here. And they were, and you alluded to them, the quality of local public education, our commitment to infrastructure in all its different forms, the way that we tackle in an effective manner addiction and recovery, and how do we build a culture of entrepreneurship that is the best in America and attracts the kind of often relatively young people that are looking for the opportunity to create, to start, or to become a part of a young business. And it turns out the characteristics that give you that very pro-entrepreneur community are some of them are intuitive, some of them are not. So it's not a simple answer, but they're interconnected. And if you've spent as much time as I have over the last 20 years seeing what works and doesn't work around the country, you realize New Hampshire's in a place where I think we can embrace this very pro-growth, pro-entrepreneur, inclusive, and attractive to young people kind of community.
Excellent. And what about dealing with, you were talking about education. What about, we're seeing stagnant wages all throughout the country, and here in New Hampshire, we have the lowest minimum wage in the country, set off the federal minimum wage. What can we do as a state to get people the disposable income they need to rent an apartment or rent a house or even buy a house or pay their student debt if they get it?
Well, if you go way back, I would argue that one of the biggest challenges New Hampshire faces, almost everything that we worry about in New Hampshire, including affordable housing, comes back to our incredible reliance on local property taxes to pay for everything. If you look at, for example, a new business in New Hampshire, most new businesses don't make a profit in the first few years. Most businesses start on a credit card or a loan off a 401k or a loan from a family member or friend. You're living on the razor's edge of making it to year 2 and year 3. So you can cut the business profits tax all you want, but if you don't make a profit, it doesn't help you. The biggest cost in state and local taxes for a lot of folks trying to start out is property tax, either in their mortgage or in the rent they pay. So it also means it changes the way we look at zoning in our state. Because we rely on local property taxes more than any state in America to pay for local public schools, over the last 50 years, we have more and more towns that zone out children. And they zone in, for example, McMansions, because McMansions produce a lot of property tax, but they don't have a lot of kids, right? You can't have more than 2 or 3 kids for the most part in a McMansion, 2-acre home. What they don't want to have is apartments, because if you take a 2-acre lot and you turn it into a lot of density, a lot of affordable housing, a lot of apartment units, you might have dozens of kids living on that 2 acres. It makes for a very vibrant community in the long run, but in the short run, it freaks out local lawmakers, local elected officials, because they're not getting that much property tax from the rental units, but they're getting a whole lot of kids that they've got to educate. In the short run, it does save them money, but in the long run, it is killing the vitality of many New Hampshire communities. It's why we get the second highest median age in America, the lowest birth rate in America, and no state in America has lost a greater percentage of its high school population in the last 10 years than New Hampshire, of any state in the country. It is all related to the way we look at the property tax as the end-all be-all of funding education, infrastructure, social services, and so on. And it's a big driver as to why we struggle to keep young people that are here or attract young ones that are not yet.
Okay, and what about dealing with the state legislator? Have you, depending on whatever the makeup is, as governor, how would you work with them to improve the state to get us on a more progressive path?
It's a 400-member legislature, as certainly you know, and some of your viewers may or may not know. About a third of the legislature flips every 2 years due to retirement or electoral change, defeat. I think this fall we're going to see more turnover than that. We're living very volatile times politically for obvious reasons, and I think we're going to see a lot of seats flip this year. I think we're going to see a Democratic majority in the House. I think we have a legitimate chance in the Senate. And obviously, I'm doing everything I can for that because I'm not just trying to get elected governor so that on my best day I can veto a bad idea. I'm running for governor to push positive ideas, generationally important ideas. And I need a team in order to see them into fruition. So I look at it, I think Democrats can get 220, 225 seats in the legislature. I think we can get 13 or 14 seats in the state Senate. And I've got a wide platform of specific policies that I think are attractive, can get some Republican support. But I make no bones about it. One of my missions is to have legitimate majorities so that we can get big ideas done in 2019.
What are some of those big ideas that you may not have mentioned?
Sure. Well, we talked about education. The driver of policy is education. You know, my opponent in the primary will talk about education, but she'll typically do it and just say, it's important. We just got to do something about it. We've got to make it stronger. But I'm a guy that audits city, county, and state governments for a living. I'm a numbers guy. The important part is the how. So I'm the only ex-mayor you're ever going to meet who did regression analysis while in office in order to figure out where you put a dollar in to get maximum return on that public investment. And so, for example, we're one of 6 states in America that do not provide state funding for pre-K. The next closest one on the map is South Dakota. We are the only state east of South Dakota that does not provide public funding, state funding for pre-K. And yet, we want to be an amazing place to start and raise your family. Are we communicating through public policy that we are serious about a mission like that? We are not. And so we know that dollars spent at the youngest ages are the greatest return on investment. It's daycare, it's pre-K, it's legitimate full-day K. Right now, we got full-day state funding of K, kindergarten, if the K stands for Keno. And while it's the best we could get with Governor Sununu, in a $6 billion a year budget, we should be able to find a way to fund full-day kindergarten in a sustainable way. But I want to go to pre-K. I also have a plan for debt-free college. I have a pilot program, costs between $4 and $5 million in year one, that starts with computer science, nursing, and elementary education. 3 places where we need young talent to enter the field.
Now, is that for community college and four-year public college, or just community college?
The pilot program could be used for the 4-year on-campus undergraduate experience, so the university system, and can also be applied to the community college system. The pilot program is meant to show that it can be done in a sustainable way, and it basically says this. We know in the private sector, we've got employers that are begging for talent. All that demographics I said earlier, second highest median age, lowest birth rate, all that. You add that to a 2.6% unemployment rate, and that's a real problem. Businesses simply cannot find people, particularly under the age of 45, to take jobs. And it is slowing down entrepreneurship. It is slowing down the movement of business into New Hampshire. It's slowing down growth. And so they are spending 75 to 100 grand easily in lost productivity, bonuses, moving bonuses, such things, to attract talent from out of state to move to New Hampshire. So when I tell them, let me make a deal with you. I'll create a new challenge grant of about $4 million a year. That will pay for half of the cost of between 300 and 400 in-state tuitions in year one. If you match the other half of it, then what happens is we can provide in selected majors in the pilot program free in-state tuition, community college, four-year college. And we turn the four-year degree program into a co-op, 5-year, like Northeastern has down in Boston. And now you do a pair of co-ops. That's why you add an extra year to 5 years. You have to work for one of the participating businesses that are part of contributing to the challenge part of the match. If you do a good job, keep your grades up, keep your nose clean, we renew it for year 2, 3, 4, and 5. At the end of it, if you are hired by one of the businesses that was a participant and you stay in it for 3 or more years, no debt. It is forgiven. If you leave early or if you move to another state to take a job, I can't stop you. You want to go to California? You go to California. But then you're on the hook for the tuition. It's a good deal.
Seems reasonable.
Very reasonable. The business loves it because they're trying to develop talent at the youngest age possible. It's a heck of a lot cheaper for them to do it that way than it is to pay for established talent, maybe in their later 20s and 30s, because they're spending all the money on the moving costs, the bonuses, the lost productivity of a vacant position. We solve that. It also helps us with the debt crisis. We have the highest average student debt of any state in America. And then it also, and this is important, it communicates at the youngest age possible to young people in New Hampshire. I want them to know where the future of the economy is going. And so at an early age, I want them to begin building a relationship with businesses in New Hampshire to understand where the jobs of the future are. Because I believe that part of the definition of happiness is if you can do something you're good at and that you love and pay your utility bill at the same time, you are well on your way to a life well lived. It's not that alone, but that's an important part of it. And this program can help really connect with younger people to let them identify how they can take their passion and their skills and match it up with economic success.
Okay. I just want to let our viewers know that if you are viewing us live on YouTube, you can go into the chat window, let us know, give us just your name, first letter of your last name, what city you're in, and a brief question. If I get it, might be put on air. So again, we're live on YouTube with Steve Marchand. And Steve, let's talk about infrastructure. We see more and more plug-in vehicles getting onto the road. Yet, throughout the state, if you look at places where you'd think you'd find a station to plug your plug-in vehicle, for instance, here in Nashua, there's one at the Elm Street garage, but there's not much else. Maybe hotels, you might, like the Marriott, you might find one.
Right.
But what can we do, or what would you do to help promote modernization of our infrastructure?
Well, when I mentioned infrastructure a few minutes ago, it's a broad range. And that includes everything from bridges and roads to water. That is becoming truly as important to a community as the quality of your schools and the quality of your public safety. To have potable, reliable water in your area is to have leverage in the 21st century. And that has moved up in my travel over the last year and a half as a top tier issue. That's infrastructure. It's also reliable cell phone and internet, particularly in western and northern New Hampshire, where entrepreneurs don't need a lot of money to start, but they do need the ability to have reliable cell phone and internet coverage. And that's a priority. But the single most powerful infrastructure improvement is an upgrading of the electric grid. If we want to lower electric bills in a 15 to 20% kind of magnitude, the way we do it is we upgrade the electric grid. It would bring solar, it would bring wind, including offshore wind, squarely into the game without even needing public subsidy. They would become profitable in a powerful way very quickly. They're the kind of generation that would be local in nature, creates quality jobs. To me, when you look at like a Northern Pass from Quebec or some of the big natural gas pipeline projects that have been discussed, those are building bridges for a bridge we've already crossed over. that's the past. That's transitory, and we're past that. And I look at an upgrading of the electric grid like they do in a lot of Europe and in parts of the west of the U.S. That's how we're going to lower electric bills, focus on conservation, and there is a role for the network of electric vehicles that can be part of that upgrading the electric grid. So my observation is the parts of the country and world that have done this have also found it to be an easier way to be able to meaningfully expand the network that, as you describe right now, is hard to find sometimes.
Okay. Looks like we still got some time tonight. You had mentioned water. We have been hearing some news regarding the Coakley landfill and water contaminants. What would you do, or what can we do at the state level to ensure that the water that you drink from the tap is safe enough for you to drink?
Well, there are a few things. First, on that specific topic, New Hampshire is the canary in the coal mine. We are actually on the front end of understanding PFOAs and similar chemicals that are being found on the coast that are in other parts of the country. We're talking about either industrial waste, so industrial sites, or old military bases like Pease, right, Air Force Base. It was the fire retardants that from the 60s and 70s that had a chemical in it, these PFOAs, that have soaked into the water over time. And while we're still learning the severity of the risk, there's little question that there's meaningfully increased risk. And I can tell you that HR directors at Pease and around the seacoast, when they are interviewing people to take jobs, are beginning to hear from prospective employees, can you tell me about the quality of the water? I've heard that there are cancer-causing or cancer risk increasing agents in the water. So what's up with that? And they know the interview's over, because it's not as if you're going to offer them $5,000 more in starting salary, and that's going to somehow take care of this seminal risk that they are worried about, rightfully worried about. So one thing we could do at the state level, I think we should look at what Vermont and New Jersey, among other states, have done, and we should lower what is considered an acceptable level of PFOAs and similar chemicals in the water. Because it's still pretty new, we have been reluctant up to this point to define it and to lower it, saying we need more science in order to know if we need to lower it. But I look at, like I said, Vermont and New Jersey, and they have come to the conclusion, and I would agree with them, that the risk is there and that we should lower that number and we should do it promptly. I also think in terms of the landfill, at Coakley landfill, we need to stop thinking about the challenge there as a simple patching up of a problem from time to time and look at it in a more systematic way. And that's going to require resources. Some of them exist and we simply need to expend them. They're in a fund there. To be able to cap it and deal with it in a holistic way. A lot of what we've been doing over the past few decades in hindsight are more reactionary, and we need to be proactive so that it doesn't get worse, and because we need to assuage the fears, legitimate fears that people have right now.
All right. You had mentioned the military base in Portsmouth, or I believe it's in or near Portsmouth.
Part of it's in Portsmouth, part of it's in Newington.
Okay. One of the things we've been seeing, because we've had the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan over the past decade, we're seeing a large influx of veterans transitioning from a theater of war to back to everyday civilian life. What, as governor, would you do to help them to transition better? What type of legislation would you promote to help the veterans who may have seen combat and might be suffering from PTSD or might be having trouble transitioning back to a civilian life? What would you do?
Well, some of this has a federal element where I would like to play a champion, a cheerleader, an advocate. For example, I believe all veterans, whether New Hampshireites or otherwise, should have access to whatever medical facilities they need in order to get the care they need. I mean, they've literally put it on the line. They put their life on the line for us, those of us that did not serve. And the least we can do is to take the drama out of getting medical care, whether it's the aftermath of afflictions due to combat or simply day-to-day life that can affect all of us. But they have gone the extra mile in terms of public service, more than any of us elected officials ever will. And this is one obvious and humane way to express the level of gratitude that we have. So I don't think that they should have to worry about going to specific facilities. If they don't want to, they should be able to use their status and go to whatever facility is needed. And that's more federal than anything, but I think governors can play a role in banging that drum. In terms of educational opportunity, I can tell you from talking to employers that veterans are some of the most attractive employees. Leadership skills, professional skills, toughness and smarts and discipline, innate character traits that make them highly attractive in almost any teamwork, any professional environment. But sometimes they need additional training for specific skills for whatever the job might be. And I think that within the program, the pilot program I described earlier, I think there are real opportunities to give, for example, veterans kind of the first place in the line so that they could get additional education if they want it, and they can do it in a way that will leave them without any debt and will give them an early opportunity at the professional connection they need to be able to get that degree and make a good living and work in New Hampshire. And I think that really expands the economic opportunities. As this economy changes, we need to give folks the opportunity to expand and adjust their skills to match changes in the economy. So I look at that program as one that we could easily embrace veterans coming back and really give them a leg up in in defining the rest of their professional life.
Excellent. Well, we do have a couple of minutes. Is there any messages you'd like to give to our viewers who might be on the fence of what to do, where to go if they need help? For instance, in Nashua and Manchester, we have the Safe Stations program for substance misuse. I've had people suggest to me that the program could also try and help people who suffer from domestic abuse, who might need help but might not know what to do. Was there anything that we can do for that?
Well, certainly as it relates to substance misuse and long-term recovery, I've been to many recovery centers, safe stations and otherwise, and the common message, particularly in recovery centers, is additional resources are needed, but the sustainability of those resources so that they don't have to guess where the money's going to come from year to year. That's such an important part. And the majority of New Hampshire, I'd say, this is the biggest challenge we face. We have a $6 billion a year operating budget, and yet we're probably about $8 million a year short in providing operating funds that would allow us to hire mental health professionals on a full-time basis, expand the detoxification process, life skills, wellness, the holistic suite needed in order to get long-term recovery done the right way. So I've listened to enough experts. That's a commitment I've made from the word go as governor. It's not a lot of additional money, but I don't think you should have to rely on one-time revenue sources, grants, philanthropy to cover operating expenses. This is important. So, a proposal without funding is called an idea in my business. And I don't want this to be an idea. The proposal I have is about $8 million additional dollars a year spread locally that can make the difference. And I think that if we do this right, we can dramatically improve the quality of life for people who are asking for help. And I want them to know that we are hearing when they're asking.
Okay. Well, we're going to call it for the night. I do want to thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you very much.
It's been great to have you back on the show, and hopefully we can get you on after the election is over and hear all the great plans you got for New Hampshire.
I appreciate that. Thank you, David.